Scott found endless joy in observing Mara, his girlfriend, in her daily activities, whether she was savouring a meal, engaging in conversation, or making humorous faces when something displeased her. To him, every aspect of her being seemed flawless, and no other woman could compare. The young couple had been together for nearly 2 years, their bond deepening since their final year of university. Now both were established in their careers, with Scott's professional life flourishing. He was eagerly planning their future together, envisioning a life filled with shared dreams and adventures. However, an unexpected event disrupted their harmonious path. One evening, Scott and Mara were invited to a friend's birthday party. The friend, Benjamin, was someone Mara had never warmed up to, finding him immature and boastful. Scott, on the other hand, valued their long-standing friendship and was looking forward to the celebration. On the same evening, Mara received tickets to a concert featuring her favourite musician, an opportunity she didn't want to miss. She tried to convince Scott to accompany her instead. "Let's go to the concert," Mara pleaded, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see them live. You can celebrate with Benjamin another time." Scott hesitated, torn between his loyalty to his friend and his desire to make Mara happy. "Mara, Benjamin is one of my oldest friends," he explained, holding her close. "I can't just skip his birthday. It means a lot to him, and to me." "Mara, you're wrong. Benjamin is my old friend, and I can't ignore his birthday," Scott said, wrapping his arms around her. "So you can ignore me and my ideas, but not him. Is that how it is?" Mara retorted, her voice laced with frustration. "Fine, go to Benjamin. Have a great time admiring him. I'm going to the concert." "Where did you even dig up this Australopithecus? He doesn't care about anything except his stupid gadgets." Scott stormed out, slamming the door behind him. He hadn't anticipated Mara's harsh reaction to his loyalty towards his best friend. Deciding to address the issue later, he called Benjamin, who answered cheerfully. "I thought you'd forgotten about me. Come over to our usual spot. Let's have a good time," Benjamin said, his enthusiasm palpable. Scott hung up with a smile. Their usual spot was a sports bar where he and his friends gathered to cheer on their favourite team. Some pretended to be fans just to enjoy the male camaraderie, feeling like real macho men. They had a great time, but Scott couldn't shake off the unease he felt about Mara. He called her several times, but she didn't answer, leaving him worried and conflicted. Finally, after everyone had left, Scott returned to the rented apartment he shared with Mara, only to find it empty. The room was in disarray, as if a storm had swept through it. The potted cactus he had given her lay on the floor, and scattered magazines and calendar pages they had collected as a collage. Scott immediately understood. Mara was upset and had left, but where had she gone? He started calling all her friends and acquaintances, even risking a call to her parents. Mara's mother, upon hearing of her disappearance, said cryptically, "I knew you'd drive her to this. The consequences will be dire." Confused, Scott pondered the situation. He hadn't wanted to go to the concert with Mara, but what terrible thing could have happened because of that? She had enjoyed the concert without having to pretend to be happy for his friend, whom she disliked. So what was the problem? Scott's mind raced with questions and worries. He couldn't understand why Mara had reacted so strongly, or where she might have gone. After a sleepless night, Scott began calling hospitals, police stations, and shelters in the morning. Chilled with horror, he even called the morgue, but everywhere he received a negative response. No girl matching Mara's description had been admitted. Well, that's something, the young man thought. At least she's alive, and if she's in trouble, she'll come back. We've been together for so many years. However, Scott waited in vain for a week, a month, or half a year. And Mara still hadn't returned. A year after her disappearance, Benjamin remarked, looking at his friend, "Look at what you've become. You're a shadow of your former self." "Forget Mara," he continued. "If she needed you, she would be here by your side." Scott could only shake his head in response. He couldn't imagine anyone else by his side but Mara. Once he even chased after a woman who resembled Mara from behind, the same hairstyle, hair colour, height and figure, but the face was unfamiliar. The uncertainty of Mara's disappearance weighed heavily on Scott, leaving him in a state of limbo. He clung to the hope that she would return, unable to move forward or let go of the love they shared. His friends and family urged him to accept the situation and move on, but Scott remained steadfast in his belief that Mara would come back to him. Time went on. One day Scott received a call from Keith, a friend from medical school with whom he occasionally hung out at their favourite sports bar. Keith sounded urgent. "Scott, where are you?" "At my office," Scott replied, puzzled. "What's happened?" "This isn't a phone conversation," Keith said abruptly. "Can you come to my workplace? I'm at the oncology clinic. You know the address. They'll let you in. I've already informed them." Wondering why Keith needed to drag him out of the office, Scott went to see his friend. The guard at the entrance simply asked which office to go to and let Scott pass. From a distance, Scott recognised Keith's tall, lanky figure. The man hurried over, and the two men exchanged a handshake. In response to Scott's questioning look, Keith silently led him away. "She asked me to find you," Keith said. "Who?" Scott asked, astonished, his mind racing with possibilities. Keith's mysterious request and the urgency in his voice hinted at something significant, leaving Scott both curious and apprehensive about what awaited him at the clinic. Instead of answering, Keith opened the door to a ward and stepped aside, letting Scott enter first. Scott couldn't believe his eyes as he saw Mara's gaunt, emaciated face on the hospital bed. "Mara, is that you?" Scott whispered, approaching her and looking intently into her eyes. Keith discreetly left the room to give them privacy. Mara faintly smiled, causing a web of fine wrinkles to appear on her face. "I knew you would come," she said softly. "So we meet again after all these years. By the way, how long has it been?" "5 years," Scott replied, stunned. "What happened to you?" "It's a long story," Mara sighed. "I'll just say this. If I hadn't been such a fool, I wouldn't be here. But that's not the point, dear. Promise me something." Scott stared at the face that had haunted his dreams almost every night, but the Mara he saw now was an entirely different person from the one in his dreams. "You must take my boy from the orphanage," Mara said. "Raise him. Samuel is a good boy, but without parents he'll be lost." "What boy? You have a son?" Scott asked, disbelieving. A cold sensation washed over him. "Our son," Mara smiled weakly. "When I left you, I wanted to punish myself. Soon I discovered I was pregnant, but I thought if I didn't tell you about the baby, I would be punishing you. I ended up punishing myself instead. After giving birth, I felt so miserable that I sought escape. The baby's cries, the diapers, I wasn't ready for any of it. I started partying, not remembering who I woke up next to, and the neighbours complained. Eventually I lost custody. I visited him in the orphanage whenever I could. I wanted to regain my rights, but, well, you see how that turned out. If only I could turn back time." Scott was in shock from what he had heard. He had spent years in fruitless searches, even foregoing fleeting affairs, to the point that his friends joked about his monk-like lifestyle. Now he found his beloved in such a state and realised she was not who he thought she was. Scott cried all night, imagining the wasted time and thinking that if he had known about his son, everything would have been different. Samuel turned out to be the spitting image of his father, dark-haired, sturdy and full of energy. Upon seeing him, Scott's mother shed tears of joy. "Just look at those jeans. He is the image of you, Scott." Samuel knew he had a father and waited for him every day by the window, calling every dark-haired man Dad. Mara had shown him Scott's photo and promised that his father would return and live with them. Father and son began taking walks in the city park on weekends. Restless Samuel often ran off, making Scott anxiously search for him. One day, while looking for Samuel, Scott heard desperate cries. "Help! A child is drowning!" Scott's heart stopped. He rushed toward the screams and saw a small body struggling in the water under a bridge. Without hesitation, Scott dove in, grabbed the child and surfaced. It wasn't his son, but a little girl. He brought her to the shore and revived her. Fortunately, she hadn't inhaled much water and soon began to cry loudly at the sight of her mother. The young, beautiful woman, about Scott's age, clutched her daughter tightly. "Celeste, thank God you're alive. Why did you run off to the bridge? I told you not to go there alone. The railing is so unsafe." Noticing her daughter's saviour, she profusely thanked him. "I don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for you, I could have lost my little girl." Scott smiled. "I was here with my son. I heard the screams and feared it was him. The important thing is that your daughter is safe. Now I need to find my little brat." "No need to look for me. I'm right here," Samuel announced importantly. "Papa, you're all wet because you saved that girl. You're a real hero." Miriam, Celeste's mother, invited the soaked Scott to her nearby home. "You need to dry off or you'll catch a cold. I live close by. Come with me. I've got a drying machine. We'll get your clothes dry in no time." She refused to accept any objections. After a hot shower, Scott changed into a wide, comfortable robe, a clean T-shirt and soft shorts. "These are my brother's clothes. Change and I'll dry your clothes," Celeste said. After the hot shower, Scott changed and went to the living room, where Celeste showed her toys to Samuel. The boy's eyes lit up at the sight of the construction sets, and he categorically declared, "This is for boys. Girls don't play with this." "Why not? I play with it," the little girl retorted, then offered, "Let's build something together." The children became so engrossed in their game that they paid no attention to the adults. Meanwhile, Scott pondered how strangely his life was unfolding. Not long ago, he knew nothing about his son. He thought he could never forget Mara, and today he sat in someone else's clothes, waiting for his own to dry. The aroma of food wafting from the kitchen reminded him that he was starving. Miriam, flushed and satisfied, emerged with a smile and invited everyone to the table. "Wash your hands and come eat. This applies to you too, Scott." Scott duly appreciated the hostess's culinary talents. The soup and cutlets were a real treat, and Samuel couldn't get enough of the dessert, an almond pie. As they were leaving, the boy quietly asked, "Dad, can we come to Celeste and Miriam's for dinner again?" Scott blushed deeply and hurried his son home. For the first time, he felt a strange interest in the woman. "Maybe it's because I saved her daughter, and she cooks amazingly," Scott thought as he drifted off to sleep. The following weekend, he went to the park again. As usual, his son ran off, and Scott followed, looking around. This time, he was searching for someone specific. He froze when he heard a familiar child's voice. "Mum, Samuel and his dad are here." Turning around, Scott saw Miriam, dressed in a light sports outfit. The woman blushed slightly as their eyes met. Scott approached and greeted her. To hide their embarrassment, they sat on a bench and started talking about trivial things. But, with each word, Scott felt a growing sense that he had known Miriam for a long time, that he had been searching for her and finally found her. Her smile and mannerisms evoked a storm of emotions within him. Gradually the image of Mara began to fade, giving way to Miriam's kind and sincere presence. After 6 months, Scott finally decided to confess his feelings. With bated breath, he waited for Miriam's response and felt the ground slip from under him when she, blushing, softly whispered, "Yes."